that. So it's clear that you convincingly argue that Hammarskjold distanced himself from Western governments and sought to maintain his office as an impartial actor in the Cold War, and that the manifold limitations of the United Nations, particularly in trying to curb the excesses of powerful states, constrained Hammarskjold's ideals. In light of this, how far true is the claim that Hammarskjold unduly colluded with Western governments over these issues, and this could have been responsible for his death in 1961?
There is this perception. It also exists among some, not all, but among some African scholars. Of lately, there was a PhD thesis by a Swedish young diplomat who is now in the diplomatic service, which he entitled The Machiavelli of Peace, which is not really sounding like a compliment, which is a catchword which was actually used by someone who was closely collaborating with Dag Hammarskjold and was one of his special representatives in the Congo who called him like that, but I think mainly to deviate from his own failures. I think it's a misperception. Hammarskjold operated within limitations. Limitations which to a large extent did not allow him to act against Western interests as described. And in very few cases also did not allow him to act against Soviet interests. So it was both. But it was, as it mainly remains to some extent, despite the shifts in global power structures, was mainly a world determined by Western influence and interests. So to act against their interests within the confinements of the office and the institution was almost a mission impossible.
Yeah.
So if you are willing to see those limitations of the office, then it would be fair enough not to blame the individual for the failures, not to live up to certain standards.
Yeah.
Because he is a captive of the structures.
Mm-hmm.
And to that extent, Dag Hammarskjold is actually an interesting general lesson in the way, where are the borders for whatever you want to do if you enter a certain arena, tasked with certain obligations. Mm-hmm. You are actually moving into a limited forum, scope. So you must be willing to accept the limitations of your mandate.
Yeah.
Very much to your frustration. And he was very frustrated at many times. And he was very frustrated also when the Soviet Union accused him of being a Western agent. By the way, he was very much, latest since the Suez Crisis, criticized by Great Britain and France. They never liked Dag Hammarskjold. So if you look at that, of course. Mm-hmm. And John F. Kennedy, when he moved into office, had huge problems to appreciate Hammarskjold's role in the Congo. Mm-hmm. So it's not that Dag Hammarskjold was very popular among the Western dominant states.
Yeah.
He was very popular for a long time among African countries, the newly independent African states, because they considered him as their Secretary General.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One anecdote. Hammarskjold had internalized these Swedish values that you're not supposed to stick out, lagom. So you need to keep a low profile. You should never brag. You should never, run around waving your merits and so on. But in a letter to one of his closest friends, the painter Bobesco, who also made all the paintings which you can now see on display in the United Nations and elsewhere, in one of these letters, he attached a caricature, a cartoon, which was in, I think it was the New York Times or the Washington Post or any one of those huge, big, influential US American newspapers. And that cartoon showed Nikita Khrushchev and General de Gaulle from France. And they were meeting, and in the center, down like a toy, was a tank. And Khrushchev had a badge wearing which said, "I don't like dark." And de Gaulle had a badge wearing, "I don't like dark either." And Hammarskjold sent that to Bobesco and said, "I normally don't brag, but I take this as a compliment."
Oh.
So he felt very comfortable with that, because for him it was kind of a confirmation that he did some right things to the awe and the anger of